warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for being patient while we were slightly delayed in setting this up. So here's what we wanted to do, as Ankur Singla mentioned, and I'll use your full name because I'm also, is use this opportunity to truly find out what's happening in the area of customer experience management globally. We're fortunate that we have Mohit Bhatnagar, who is the managing director at Sequoia Capital. They have not just invested in Akosha within India, but have also had global investments in this area. So they truly know what it is to be a part of this space, as well as Ankur, who has the benefit of looking at all your brands and trying to get the best insights on how customers are engaging. I can do that from Asia-Pacific perspective because I'm fortunate to be in an area where I see very different patterns of how customers engage with brands and how the brands deal with the customers, vice versa. So let's start with a brief introduction so that we just set the context. Mohit, you've had not just a VC life, but also a corporate life. So we'd love to just hear a little bit about that before we start.
Hi everyone, sitting in darkness, and I hope some of this reaches you guys. I'm Mohit, and like Ankur said, I've been with Sequoia since 2006. Prior to that, I was with Bharti, and before that, I had a startup, out in the US. Let me just give you a little bit of a spiel on Sequoia for those who are not familiar with us. We've been investing in India for the last 7 years and across the globe for the last 30 years. Been very fortunate to have been early investors in companies like Apple, Cisco, Yahoo, Google, PayPal, and so on and so forth. And in India, we've been busy as well. We're early investors in Just Dial, Mu Sigma, Prism Payments, Vasan Eye Care, Cafe Coffee Day, and of course Akosha, amongst others. Micromax is another one that's up here today. I'd love to sort of share with you a little bit about what we've been seeing both in India as well as specifically in this space, but I'll leave that for the questions.
Sure, and Ankur, you want to give a quick intro on who you really are?
Okay, so my name is Ankur again. I happen to be a lawyer by background, which is a very, I'm sure there are no other lawyers in this room, barring one, I think. But I came to Akosha in a very long-winded manner, and I'll talk about that later on and how that has kind of also been helpful for us to think from first principle level and think about how customer experience can actually be managed a lot better. But I'm the founder at Akosha. We now have more than 180 people team, which is building the company to the next level.
I've been with Groupon for about 3.5 years. So in my portfolio, I look after India, Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines. 4 extremely fast-growing markets and very, very different patterns on how consumers interact with the online world. We've had a fair share of looking at different problems to solve, and as brands, then finally discovering something like Akosha. So we work with Akosha, and it's been about a 2-year association now, and I will definitely love to talk about how that has helped and what are the different patterns. But Mohit, on to you. We would love to hear from you on what your take is, both on the enterprise software perspective and within that specifically the customer experience management bit.
Sure. So let me talk about 2 trends and try and bring it together to try and answer that question. First one is clearly, and we're seeing this in India, right, more than anywhere else in the world, just the proliferation of these smartphone devices is causing scores of people to get online. And that's then causing companies to get used to sort of dealing with their customers online primarily, even if they were traditionally offline businesses. So to give you a sense, most of the people and brands in this room here last year may have had something like 10, 20, 30% of their customers coming on the mobile. Clearly, everyone here has at least 40 to 50% of his business today coming from the mobile phone. And there are many here who probably have even larger than that. Now that's great because a lot of people coming online means their service, the e-commerce and other affiliated services are getting a lot of traction and are scaling up. But the challenge that has come about as a result of that big proliferation of devices is that consumers are now expressing themselves, consumers are now expecting service in an online medium as well. And companies are frankly struggling with that. If you look at the US, we've made investments into companies like Medallia, ServiceNow, 24/7. And the single biggest trend that we're seeing in the Valley right now is as these businesses are trying to deal with customers who are now expressing themselves on an app store via reviews, or a Yelp via reviews, or a Facebook or a Twitter handle, it has become incredibly important for an enterprise customer to, one, be able to first pull out, abstract, get access to feedback on itself across all mediums, and then intelligently, almost on the fly, find ways for them to actually analyze it, make sense of it, and then finally do something about it. And this is a non-trivial task because the volume of traffic that we're talking about, the volume of the feedback that we are referring to is just going through the roof, isn't it? So that is sort of one big thesis for us at Sequoia in the enterprise space, is to really try and help our businesses deal with the feedback the customers are giving across all these different social networks and beyond. The second big thesis for our enterprise investing has been clearly SaaS. CRM, which is a well-known space and has created large companies, is close to something like $40 billion as a market. But some of you may not know that close to 45% of their market is now moved on to SaaS. And so the young startups who are actually allowing their enterprise customers to pay as they go and are allowing their enterprise customers to sort of build on top of the traditional CRM networks are the ones that are getting the maximum traction. So we really married the SaaS thesis along with just the proliferation of mobile and the online access to try and create some of these investments that we've done.
And as a brand, I can actually relate to what you're saying, because at Groupon, we see that a lot of our customers are moving to social media, not necessarily to consume content as much, but also to voice their opinion, either positive or negative. And it's almost, I love the fact that you have a top where you would see that the boundaries of marketing and customer service are actually blurring. You wouldn't know which is which. And I think some of us, or most of us, would have seen this recent case where an e-commerce customer had an experience. He got a Vim bar as against a mobile phone, and there was some other brand that completely lapped onto that and gave him the actual phone, and both of these became viral. It's just absolutely fascinating and how these things are turning around.
Another good example of this is we're investors in Zomato, and we were talking to a restaurant recently, actually today, and it was very interesting to so a lot of, how many people know Zomato or use Zomato? Just show of hands. That's great. And so one of the big reasons all of us use Zomato is the reviews, isn't it? And the ratings that we see. And that's what, of course, is what the company keeps building into the product to allow for it to get bigger and better and faster. But today we were talking to a restaurant, and it was very interesting to hear his perspective on exactly this, where he said, how do I even know if that review you're reading is actually real or not? How do I even know that customer feedback, is it authentic or not? Clearly I've got competition that's trying to mess me up. And so all of a sudden there's this whole other need that's got created in the market that, thanks to these smartphones and consumers giving their feedback because they can, there needs to be a whole set of new tools, technologies, and solutions built for the enterprises to be able to actually absorb it and deal with it. And I thought it was really interesting that there's a whole new vertical that I need to go make investments behind now. And so you've got a whole new vertical to go after.
Exactly. I remember this particular case on the Akosha dashboard that came up. There was this customer who had, so we had a deal, and Groupon runs deals. We also do product deals, but it's not a big part of our business. But in this particular case, we were running a deal on a pair of shorts, and these were just normal shorts. So there was this customer who was absolutely going crazy over social media saying, Groupon has cheated me, Groupon has cheated me, and it came up on the Akosha platform. And it wasn't very obvious because we saw, had we shipped it in time? Yes, we had. Did he get the delivery? Yes, he did. Did we charge him extra or whatever? No, he didn't. And did he come back saying that he got a wrong piece? No. His problem was, he's saying, you said it was a pair of shorts, but I only got one. And he wrote into me, because then I wanted to. Now, this is a tricky situation because you don't want to be the ass saying, get your English right, but at the same time, he's a customer, and at the end of it, you have to. So I was very polite, and I said, so, I'm sorry, perhaps it was misinterpreted. A pair of shorts actually means one. And I think that's where I went wrong. I sent him a link to dictionary.com explaining how it is, and that's where I think I went a little overboard. So he came back and says, you US companies, you think you can come in with your US attitude. This is India, pair means two, and stuff like that. But it was fascinating how consumers behave and perceptions are, and I distinctly remember this example from before. Great. Do you, when you see Ankur, brands, and it's not that you get an evil thrill looking at, oh, this brand is worse than off, but you have what is very powerful. You're actually looking at brands not just within categories but across categories. What are the few underlining themes that you are looking at from a consumer perspective that you think every brand should know that perhaps they don't?
So I think one of the things which I think sometimes we feel, so again in all of these meetings, is that sometimes we feel that brands are not appreciating how important or how big or how impactful this is. So for example, we were in a meeting sometime back where we were talking about an API integration with our own platform, and this question came up that, hey, we get 1 lakh calls, whereas on social media we get only 2,000. So do we really need to do that? And I think just, if you look at that whole early adopters theory, you have this situation where a lot of people are online or on social media. And I think that trend will only become bigger. So you could very well have where it is sitting at 2% or 3% today. You could very well have a situation where it is 35, 40% in 2017. But you need to start preparing for it today. And I think somewhat the e-commerce companies get it a little faster, or the online companies get it faster. But I think this is one big difference. I think the second thing which, again, from our meetings is essentially because of cross-functional impact of this. So I think one of the things that brands struggle with is that who should interact with the customer on a channel which is both marketing and customer service. And if one person is doing the campaigns and a separate person is doing the customer service part, how does that really work? And I think that's a challenge which will keep, it will become somewhere, I think, over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see emergence of this new professional who will probably be able to map both the sides very well. And I think that's, again, something which maybe brands need to appreciate more from our meetings, at least. There are definitely those which do, but I think for the others, the realization will become a lot more clearer that, you'll have a very different kind of person in customer service / marketing, digital marketing very soon.
Mohit, you recently made upwards of a $5 million investment in Akosha. What were the things that you feel are going right, which brands need in India, and got you interested?
The first thought that comes when we answer that is really the team and Ankur and his management team. I remember meeting them long time back at Goa once, and Ankur at about 8 p.m. asking for a few contacts who he could go offer his proposition to. By 10 o'clock, my mailbox was flooded with requests. By next day, he had actually started closing half of them. So I think just the hustle, the ambition, the passion in the team was just sort of spectacular, and we've been just fortunate to have been picked by these guys to partner with. I think the second that we always look for in any enterprise business is customer feedback and customer love. So for us, very early on, and we've made a series of investments in the company through the period that we've been involved, just the feedback. I remember anecdotally, again, we're investors in Micromax. I remember first telling the Micromax guys, about this company. They didn't quite get it. Ankur went across, and I remember that meeting, which just completely floored everybody at Micromax in terms of just they didn't even realize how much was sort of going on outside their purview on the public social networks, and the sort of the Akosha dashboard sort of brought it home, and really action-oriented results sort of created from there. So I think that customer love and that feedback is something that we look for in all our companies. And frankly, third is just the space. Like I said to you earlier, it's a no-brainer for us that close to 50 to 70% of all enterprises in India will be using software like of the nature that Akosha has over the years, because it's just too hard a problem. You've got consumers coming in on, like I said, Twitter or Facebook or on the phone on your customer care accounts or any other social medium, and it's just so hard real time to be able to analyze it and keep it all straight. So we think it's a no-brainer for companies in India to sort of adopt something like this.
And eventually have hopefully a WhatsApp integration as well. I've started receiving customer issues on WhatsApp, like you're just picking up my number somewhere, and
so we are on red alert. The moment WhatsApp releases an API, we're going to build something for that, because it's just going to happen. And in fact, that's one of the other things where WhatsApp. So I think a lot of, and this is again from conversations. Like I said, I'm not from the industry, but I think a lot of people tried chat in 2003 to 2008 bracket, especially as large companies, and it didn't really work because the customer chatting on desktop was never an experience which they liked. But I think WhatsApp has changed something very fundamentally for all of us. Now a lot of our company thing also happens on WhatsApp, and now very soon from peer-to-peer, from there to colleagues, to then customer to brand interaction, we feel it's going to probably get there as well. So yeah.
I think 90% of the world is waiting for WhatsApp APIs. We'd love to hear from the audience if there are any specific questions to Ankur, Mohit, or myself. I see a hand there. Is there an extra mic in the... If you could introduce yourself, ma'am, and who's your question directed to?
So what I want to understand from all of you is at just the way brands have used Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. to fundamentally send their message out. At what stage do you see brands using WhatsApp to do the same thing? And if at all do you think that's even possible by way of the scope that WhatsApp allows? So would be keen to hear your views on that.
I get spammed by a particular spa in Easter Kailash every day. So someone's definitely using it. Honestly, I don't know. But to answer your question broadly, and I happen to have done my MBA from the Indian School of Business, and the business guy at WhatsApp is Neeraj, who's actually my batchmate. So he was in the thick of thing when that 18 billion happened, but he's not so rich anymore. And I've asked this question a lot of times to him, like, when are you opening up WhatsApp as a business tool? Because you've built a fantastic consumer tool, so you can literally start monetizing, if you will. Businesses would love to pay you. They don't seem to be in such a hurry. I don't know why, but I think they are thinking of these things right now. But to answer your question, I think the best thing that they can do immediately is to remove the limit of the groups to more than 50, because that will automatically, as Ankur mentioned, start creating these customer cohorts, if you will, where either brands will create a cohort of their active customers, or customers will create their own groups to whatever discussions, etc., where brands can participate, and that could be the first step. But yeah, it's almost like a business strategy question for WhatsApp.
Is anybody from Healthcart in the room? He's supposed to come later. But when Prashant comes in later, you should ask him this, or you may not say it publicly, so I might as well say it when he's not here. So we were asking about, they've launched an application, a mobile application called Healthcart Plus. And this application essentially allows you to compare medicines and see the underlying drug and compare prices, side effects, and so on and so forth. And they were trying really hard. They were trying really hard to try and get this thing marketed and downloaded, and struggling, frankly. And Prashant was on holiday somewhere, and suddenly he saw this thing just going through the roof. His downloads going through the roof. Servers, crashing, not being able to keep up. Like, what the hell happened here? Thought it was an error in the data, couldn't believe it, so on and so forth. It turned out that this thing had gone viral on WhatsApp. So it's not even like they had to integrate or anything else, but in his particular case, and he swears by it, that there was this thing going around where someone was just saying that, don't buy medicines unless you sort of check it out and see if it's for real or not using this application. And that single message sort of has caused the Healthcart Plus to become the #1 in its category of medical on mobile. So it works.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing that and following it up, because suddenly I was also one of the ones to download the same day. And it gave a pretty good idea of a generic medicine versus other medicines.
Right.
So I think that was the first time when one of the government came up very strongly on the prices of the medicines. That's when it started coming down. And I think Satyamev Jayate is one of the programs in which there were generic medicines. That's when we all started searching if there is an app, and thankfully then there was.
Yeah. I remember the Satyamev Jayate episode where Amir Khan did mention, look for the generics instead of the specifics. Crazy world now, we're living in a very different world. Any other questions, please?
This forum is supposed to address the how do we manage customer experience, especially on the social, and that's the future, as I hear from the panelist here. In my opinion, and I may be wrong, servicing a customer on a social is actually inviting more problems than, let's say, servicing him right with the right intent. So I always have maintained an opinion and have been propagating it wherever I meet and in my company as well, that we should find someone, take him elsewhere, and make him happy, but just not attempt to service him over there, because with all the good intents, it may still backfire big time. What's your view on that?
So I think I can answer that. I think so. We've seen people with very specific preference on this point. There are some brands which prefer to take the conversation offline, and that has its own advantages. There are some brands who feel that probably we should have it there. I think if I were to put some numbers to it, out of, let's say, 75 to 80% are in your camp, where they feel it is better to take the conversation offline. That's why one of the most common thing that comes up in all the social listening tools is please DM us your number, because that's what people are trying to do, to take it offline. I think that has its advantages. I think the customer also, at least today, is just trying to get your attention. Even he does not want to wash his dirty linen in public unless obviously you're not even listening to him. And I think that will continue, except just being able to even manage that itself is fairly difficult when you can't really uniquely identify the customer back into your CRM, or when even doing that is a fair amount of pain. The other camp believes that obviously that we have the wherewithal to have that interaction in real time on social media, and that and then the quality of the people you need who will interact with the customer again goes higher up. So I think some of the online brands have decided to own their own voice, and they are willing to do that interaction directly on social media. So I think again, if at all, maybe in the future, this camp might become bigger, but we'll see. As in, I don't really have a strong view on this. I think for a lot of large brands where you're talking about huge amounts of volume, probably the first option is definitely better.
Let's do that. Great. Thank you so much. And all of you have a great evening ahead. Thank you.